Okay. Welcome to Rukhsana's book club, the housekeeping rules. Please stay muted. The session will be recorded, and there will be time for questions and discussions. Right now, I'm going to ask you to mute yourselves, and when we have the discussions afterwards, which are the most important part of the whole story time, then you can raise your hand and I'll unmute you one at a time, or you can type your question into the chat. Okay. Now, today's story, the word for the day is perspective. And perspective is basically an attitude. Well, there's two kinds of perspective. Sometimes there's perspective when it comes to drawing, like you're looking at an angle and you're drawing everything within a perspective. Okay, but I'm talking about the perspective that means an attitude toward or a way of looking at something. It's kind of like a point of view. That's perspective. Now, the reason I thought of perspective is because of this story. It's called Farmer Joe's Hot Day. This is such a funny story. It's actually kind of based on a folk tale. There's a folk tale that this story is based on. We'll talk about it in the discussion, okay? But first, I'm just going to read the story to you. Okay. Farmer Joe lived with his wife in an old house in the middle of a big field. Okay. So what the author is doing is setting up the story. This is who Farmer Joe is. He's in the title. Farmer Joe lived with his wife in a in an old house in the middle of a big field. Every day, Farmer Joe worked hard in the field. He cut the wheat, he planted the corn, he pulled the weeds. The sun shone down on him, and by the end of the day, he was hot and tired. Okay. Now, he's cutting the wheat. Look at he's cutting it with the scissors. Okay. He planted the corn. He's actually planted a whole ear of corn and he pulled the weeds. And look at the bottom. You can see that there's going to be another story going on in this book. The artist makes another story in the book with this little, I think it's a groundhog. Okay. The groundhog, he's pulling the weed and the groundhog is pulling back. Okay. There's a lot of funny things in this book. One day, Farmer Joe complained to his wife, "Every day I work hard in the field. I cut the wheat, I plant the corn, I pull the weeds. The sun shines down on me, and by the end of the day, I am hot and tired. What can I do?" Okay. Now look at what the wife is doing. His wife is pouring him some coffee and she's flipping a pancake. Okay. That's important too. The wife says, "Wear your jacket," said his wife. "My jacket?" said Farmer Joe. "Yes," said his wife. So the next day, Farmer Joe put on his jacket and off he went to work in the field. Now, do you think wearing a jacket is going to help? Hmm. He cut the wheat, he planted the corn. The sun shone down on him, and before the end of the day, he was so hot and tired that he could not pull the weeds. "What can I do?" Farmer Joe complained to his wife. Now look what his wife is doing. She's hanging up the laundry. Mm. "Wear your coat," said his wife. "My coat?" said Farmer Joe. "Yes," said his wife. So the next day, Farmer Joe put on his jacket and his coat, and off he went to work in the field. He cut the wheat. The sun shone down on him, and before the end of the day, he was so hot and tired that he could not pull the weeds or plant the corn. Look at his face. Look at his face. He's so hot. "What can I do?" Farmer Joe complained to his wife. Now look at what his wife is doing. I think she's fixing the car. Okay. "Wear your scarf and mittens," said his wife. "My scarf and mittens?" said Farmer Joe. "Yes," said his wife. So the next day, Farmer Joe put on his jacket and his coat and his scarf and mittens, and off he went to work in the field. Oh my God, that's so funny. The sun shone down on him and his jacket and his coat and his scarf and mittens. He was so hot and tired that he could not cut the wheat or plant the corn or pull the weeds. Farmer Joe was very angry. "What can I do now?" he asked his wife. "I am so hot and tired that I cannot work in the field." "Take off your scarf and mittens," said his wife. "Take off your coat and jacket." "Take them off," said Farmer Joe. "Yes," said his wife. The next day, Farmer Joe worked hard in the field. He cut the wheat, he planted the corn, he pulled the weeds. The sun shone down on him, and by the end of the day, he was hot and tired, but he never complained again. Oh my gosh. Okay, now in the story, that's the story of Farmer Joe's hot day. Now I'm going to stop recording at this point. Okay, I'm going to stop recording and then we'll have our discussion.